Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague across the aisle just mischaracterized the Democratic amendment that was offered during committee, and I think if he went back and looked at the record, he would see that. Mr. Speaker, this legislation purports to improve law enforcement officer safety and wellness. It seeks to do this by requiring the Attorney General and other federal officials to issue reports about attacks on officers, aggression against officers, and officer mental health. While this legislation may seem on the surface to be meaningful, let us be really clear. It is just more cheap talk from Republicans. Absolutely nothing in this bill makes a single police officer safer or invests a single dollar in officer wellness. While the collection of accurate data, including data on officer attacks and mental health, is important, this bill is unlikely to provide any new or meaningful data. By necessity, data about incidents of violence against law enforcement officers must already be initially collected and reported, if at all, by tribal, state, and local authorities who are in the best position to know about these incidents, not the Attorney General. The federal government collects this data through the participation by these authorities in voluntary data reporting programs like the National Incident-Based Reporting Program and the Law Enforcement Officers Killed and Assaulted Data Collection. But nothing in this bill provides any resources for more agencies to participate in these data collection programs, nor does it mandate any kind of reporting. Given that there is nothing in this bill to improve the underlying data that is available to the Attorney General and others, it is unlikely that the reporting required by the bill would be able to deliver any new insights that might actually improve officer safety. Democrats sought to solve this basic problem of inadequate data collection through the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Under that bill, states would be required to report shootings, deaths, and other uses of force involving law enforcement officers, and states would receive grants to facilitate that reporting. By both mandating and supporting data collection and reporting, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act would significantly improve the data available to the Congress, federal agencies, and the public. Critically, unlike this legislation, that bill would require reporting of uses of force both by and against law enforcement, enabling us to have a full understanding of the dangers faced by officers as well as the injuries and deaths of civilians that are caused by police. In focusing only on attacks against officers, this bill turns a blind eye to uses of force by law enforcement against civilians, whether it is justified or not. The mental health reporting provisions of the bill are also unlikely to improve officer wellness because they fail to build on the work of past Congresses and the Biden administration. In the 115th Congress, we passed the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act, a bipartisan bill signed into law by President Obama, which directed the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and DOJ's Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services to report on mental health practices and services that could be adopted by law enforcement and the programs already available to them. It also expanded the availability of grant funds for law enforcement mental health and developed new educational resources. Building on this work, President Biden issued a 2022 executive order on advancing effective, accountable policing and criminal justice practices to enhance public trust and public safety. The executive order required the Attorney General to develop and publish a report on best practices to address law enforcement officer wellness and to make recommendations regarding the prevention of death by suicide of law enforcement officers. The Attorney General has already complied with this executive order, so we already know much more about the mental health resources and the needs of law enforcement. Rather than retread our steps, we should be moving forward to help our law enforcement officers implement this important work so that more officers can access the support that they need. Last Congress, under Democratic control, the House passed numerous bipartisan bills that improved law enforcement officer safety and wellness, like Protecting America's First Responders Act, the Public Safety Officer Support Act, the Confidentiality Opportunities for Peer Support, or the COPS Counseling Act, and the Law Enforcement De-Escalation Training Act. And at least 7 bipartisan law enforcement bills, many led by Republicans, have been passed by the Democratic-led Senate. These are bills that would help law enforcement and are priorities for the police groups. But so far, House Republicans have only advanced one of them. This legislation represents another wasted opportunity to work together on substantive proposals that will make our communities and the law enforcement officers that protect them safer. I urge members to oppose this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman.